and welcome to the Headline Books Christmas Extravaganza here on Zoom Into Books and Headline Books. Today we are chatting with three amazing Headline Books authors, award-winning Headline Books authors. We are going to be discussing voices from the pandemic, and we also have guest interviewer with us, Dawn Helin. So if you all have questions for any of our presenters today, feel free to type them into the comments section of this video. Also, if you have to leave early and you can't watch the whole thing, you can watch the replay here on our Facebook pages, or you can watch them on the Zoom Into Books YouTube channel beginning in December. So be sure to subscribe to that so you'll get notified when we do post our new videos. So again, we want to welcome you all today and welcome Dawn. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Well, thank you very much, Ashley. It's great to be here, and we're looking forward to our Christmas program. You know, for many years, I attended and was pleased to attend the Southern Christmas program in Charlotte, North Carolina. I made new friends, and it was a great time. Sadly, like rest of the country, we got canceled for valid health and safety reasons. But I miss my friends, and I miss the opportunity. This virtual program by Headline Books is an opportunity for readers to hear their favorite authors and to receive signed books. As my friend Rick Robinson says, nothing says I love you better at Christmas than a signed book. All you have to do is go to the Headline Books website, pick books from your favorite authors, and receive them in the mail signed by that author. It's easy because we know it's hard. It's hard for you to get out like you would normally do at Christmas time, and you still have a need for Christmas presents. So remember, a signed book is a wonderful Christmas present. Today we have a special treat. We'll be discussing our new anthology, Voices from the Pandemic. I'm proud to say that our voices received an honorable mention from the New York Book Festival. And so it's only been out a month or so, and it's already receiving awards. Also, I'm pleased to say that we have two very special friends today who have written memoirs and will be reading those memoirs. So what we'd like to do today, I'd like to give a short introduction about how this book came to be, and then we'll turn it over to these two special friends. And just so you know who you'll hear from, first we'll hear from Joe Coleman. He was a member of the Platters for 23 years and was a regular at the Sahara Hotel in Las Vegas, performing popular songs such as Only You, remember that? My Prayer, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, oh God, I love that one. The Great Pretender, and so many more #1 hits. He's a co-author of the award-winning book, My Time to Shine, a memoir of the careers of Coleman, Joe Blunt, the former lead singer of the Drifters, and Glenn Leonard, the former lead singer of the Temptations, and Joe Michael Willard. Joe and Coleman and Joe Blunt are Zoom Into the Book authors. Our second reader is Dreama Denver. Dreama was married for 3 decades to TV icon Bob Denver, known to millions worldwide as the star of the television classic Gilligan's Island. The two met when they were cast opposite one another in a TV production and toured the country for many years performing together. An author and speaker, Dreama keeps Bob's legacy alive via her work with the Denver Foundation, supporting special needs children and also U.S. Army veterans. And that caught my eye because I am a veteran. Dreama also is a Zoom Into the Book author. So what I'd like to do is spend 5 or 6 minutes just talking a little bit about how we got here, and before I turn it over to our two very special guests. And as many of you know, I was a career Army guy. I had overseas tour in Europe and Vietnam, and stateside assignments, including 3 tours, almost 10 years in the Pentagon. And that showed me that White House and the lobby Congress is a crazy place to be. And during that time, I must have written a gazillion, subject to letters and lots of Army regulations. Then I began to realize, as I was getting ready to move on, there's probably not a big demand in the civilian community for a guy that's really good on writing Army regulations. And I really lucked out because I saw an ad in the paper that the Washington Post was hosting a travel writing symposium. And I thought, hey, Elaine and I like to travel. Maybe I ought to go. Now, some of you may not be aware, but there's a key difference between travel brochures and travel articles. Travel brochures are simply, give me the facts. It'll list populations, number of stores, what their hours are, directions, things like that. Important. But the difference is that travel articles attempt to bring the reader into the article, into the place, make them want to go to it. So we use creative nonfiction to help readers, they can hear the rushing waters. They can feel the sun. They can smell the flowers. We want to bring them into that article. And so creative nonfiction helps to overcome what could be boring nonfiction. And this is an important background for our memoirs, because the memoirs are nonfiction. They're the truth, what happened. And it can be more fun for your reader. They're expecting a story. And what we'd want to do is try to give them a story. And that's what I think we've done very successfully in our anthology. After the course, I spent 6.5 years as a travel writer before I moved to the dark side and started writing fiction. And I've used my experience in the military to create my hero, Colonel Zach Kelly, who works for the President's National Security Advisor. Now, Elaine and I arrived in over 55 community about 3 years ago here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. By that time, I'd already published 5 novels. And my latest novel, Missing, was published just by Headline Books just about a month ago. And it concerns a third-party candidate who uses artificial intelligence to cook the books and try to steal the presidential election. Now that is a pretty timely story. And I'm still writing travel articles for a number of papers, and internet, there's a big business. When I arrived here, I started talking to a lot of my friends, and many of these seniors have great stories. One of my friends, I found out, a quiet guy, he was on the Selma March with Martin Luther King. What a story that must have been. Another, an 18-year-old German living behind the wall, couldn't stand it anymore. So he got together with some friends. And for 6 months, they went down in the basement with a kayak and put it together in the dark. Then one night, they took that package out on the beach, put it together with no moon, and sailed off and were picked up by a Danish liner. Can you imagine those stories? So we tried to do a memoir group here at Willow Valley. And we really were great for about 7 months until the virus hit. So then we ended up with some Zoom workshops, which were wonderful. So you say, okay, what is a memoir? Okay, a memoir is really a slice of life. It's not an autobiography, which is your complete life story, but a slice of that life. It might be 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 6 months, like our pandemic has been so far. It can be something like the summer I spent with Grandma and learned to swim. And the key is that memoir tries to meld the accuracy of nonfiction with the storytelling tools of fiction. In mid-March, my publisher and I started doing Zoom workshops. And we did in May a number of workshops on how to write a memoir. And in there we talked about the importance of research and really what you're trying to do. I like to call it a time travel. You're going back and you're taking your reader by the hand on a time travel through something. And that's a good way to look at it. As far as structure, you might have a chronology, this happened, then that happened, and then this happened. Or you could use an episodic. And that can be very effective. An episodic is you do an episode and you kind of stitch that together in a number of episodes. I think the best example of how that works might be LA Law. LA Law is a series of stories, and you all kind of know some of the key characters. And each week they have a small episode that gets solved, and then they move on to something new. In dialogue is very important, because remember when you were in school and you used to read some of these textbooks, and there'd be big paragraph after big paragraph. Well, we want to avoid that by breaking up some of those gigantic paragraphs by using dialogue. And that's a good way to do it. The other thing I think that's so important is using your senses. Many people write and talk by sight. That's kind of the cardinal sense. And I saw this, I saw that. But you forget all about the other senses. And we want to try to use those in your memoir to make it more exciting and more fun. For example, a lot of people don't realize that the scent of smell is the scent that is tied most to memory. You may smell a bar of soap, and it reminds you of your grandma. And that takes you back to when you used to spend time on the farm with her during the summer. Other senses, you've got touch. I'm walking on the beach, I'm sun crackling, or the sand crackling under my feet. Taste, all these senses, what you want to do is try to meld that. So we put together this workshop, and then we began to think, probably all of you remember what you were doing when Kennedy was shot. I know for me, I was in Germany. I was a young butterball, second lieutenant. And the night, it was 7 o'clock at night when I heard, but I knew exactly what I was doing. And I knew that I remember the next few days. How about 9/11? Everybody remembers what they were doing. I was sitting on the porch drinking coffee. My daughter called me from San Antonio. She knew I lived in Pennsylvania. And she said, "Dad, are you okay?" I said, "What do you mean, am I okay?" "Dad, go turn on the television." And I got to the TV just in time to see that second plane hit. And I can tell you everything. And you know what? When we look back on these months, you're going to know exactly what happened. And just think how fun and valuable it would be to have a memoir of what your experiences are. So my publisher put out a call for 1,500 word memoirs. And we got some terrific memoirs. And I agreed to help edit the anthology. And we ended up with the program, Our Voices from the Pandemic. And what I'd like to do now is to introduce two people who I have just enjoyed meeting so much. And I'd like first Joe Coleman to read his memoir, When the Music Stopped. And then we'll turn it over to Dreama. And then what I'd like to do is have a couple of questions and answers here. And then I hope you will save up your questions for Joe and for Dreama. And we'll take time for you to go through your questions and have a good discussion. So Joe, go ahead, take it away.
Thank you, Don. This is so exciting for me. I was so pleased and excited when publisher Kathy Teets of Headline Books asked me to submit something. And of course, not truly thinking of myself as an author, I was quite hesitant at first, and then decided I would throw something in there because it just sounded so exciting. And so I came up with a little piece that I refer to as When the Music Stopped, because it was quite impactful on me as an entertainer, as an artist. The pandemic definitely changed my world quite a lot. We went from A to Z quite quickly, actually. And so this is my contribution to Voices from the Pandemic. I'll do my best to read it without stumbling too much. When the music stopped, we all heard the whispers. There was a mysterious virus out there that was going to devastate the world. It was something mentioned on cable television almost casually at first. It didn't have a name. It hadn't been confirmed to be true, but it was floating around in the air, something very dangerous that was more than a possibility, more like an inevitability. But we can't be sure. None of us took it too seriously as we continued to go about living our lives. Then in mid-February, it became a reality. There were numerous cases in Wuhan, China, and people were dying. Worse, no one seemed to know what it was or what it was about. But it was over there, so no need to fear. It was something they need to deal with and get under control. This wasn't something we need to deal with right now. And so we didn't. We downplayed it. It will go away on its own, they said. That's pretty much how it was for me too. Just like most people, it wasn't something I focused on or understood. There was no sense that it would have any great effect on my life or that of those I love. So let's keep dancing. It is now mid-July, and COVID-19 has impacted my life in so many ways that I can't begin to count them. But to fully understand how I've been impacted, I should take you back to the beginning of the pandemic and work my way forward. On January 1st, my management team and I were busy planning my vocal group's trip to Tampa for a week of shows at Busch Gardens, Tampa, as part of their Real Music, Real Legends series. It was an especially exciting time for us because we had a new guy in the group, Theo Peoples, and we considered this a new beginning, a fresh start with an amazing young talent who happened to be the only vocalist in Motown history to have sung lead for both the Temptations and the Four Tops. Theo Peoples is a bad man, and we're super excited. By January 7th, 2020, I found myself on stage at Busch Gardens, Tampa, performing with my new group, Voices of Classic Soul. Actually, on that date, we were called Coleman Blunt Peoples. You see, back in mid-September, we were faced with the unhappy task of parting ways with our longtime friend and stage mate, Glenn Leonard, who had decided to give full attention to his Glenn Leonard's Temptations review, which was receiving a lot of attention in the European market. Glenn Leonard, Joe Blunt, and I were members of a group called Leonard, Coleman, and Blunt for over 10 years. I've known these guys for most of my life. I met Joe Blunt at the church at the tender age of 7 or 8 years old. Our moms were co-directors of the junior choir at the church, and we were automatically in the choir. Neither of us recalls being asked if we wanted to be in the choir. Joe met Glenn when he was 15 years old, after which he became a member of our local music circle in the DC metro area. We performed in numerous vocal groups together because before we each miraculously landed in the three of the most iconic groups in history. Glenn joined the Temps, Joe B joined the Drifters, and I found my way to a 23-year career with the Platters. With that background, let's move forward. After a very successful week of shows in Tampa, we were poised to capitalize on several opportunities that have been developing for us. We were booked for shows in Los Angeles, New York, New Jersey, Richmond, Florida, and West Virginia. Yes, Dreama, West Virginia. Had book fairs scheduled in Houston and Chicago regarding our book, My Time to Shine, and were scheduling recording sessions to record new material to stay current. In other words, things were looking up for us. We did a Valentine's Day performance at a beautiful supper club in Alexandria, Virginia, called the Carlisle Club. The place was packed with many of our local fans, loyal fans who had come to experience the new group and the new guy in the group, Theo Peoples. Electricity was in the air and Theo did not disappoint, singing Baby, I Need Your Lovin', Baby, I Need Your Lovin' at a fever pitch. He won our fans over before the first song ended, and that's a fact. As we head into March 2020, it's becoming increasingly clear that this coronavirus is very serious. The medical experts are sounding the alarm and advising us that this is an extremely deadly disease transmitted through the air. However, they make two critical errors in their explanation of what we're dealing with. They say only medical personnel need to wear masks. At least they weren't sure. And they tell us the disease doesn't seem to affect young people. They say it's a disease that affects the elderly and the infirm. The problem being, our youth embrace this theory fully and completely, causing them to be somewhat reckless in how they deal with the disease from a social perspective. Everyone is now in a panic to get supplies and prepare for a lockdown to flatten the curve of this now devastating virus. My wife and I rushed to the store only to find that shelves are emptying rapidly. Hand sanitizer, paper towels, Lysol, and other disinfectant cleaning products are entirely out of stock. With toilet paper, can someone please explain this phenomenon being all the rage? Yes, toilet paper is flying off the shelves and is being hoarded as if it was made of gold. As the days go by, I begin to hear of friends and family who have this disease. This is very scary because due to the pandemic, yes, by now the experts have declared COVID-19 a pandemic. We are becoming further removed from each other. As the threat level increased, all personal contact is being discouraged. No handshaking, no hugs. 6 feet is becoming like 6 miles as we are asked to stay as far away from each other as possible as a hugger. This is hard. It is in this environment I learned that Andre Jackson, my former stage mate with Glenda's Temptations group, has the virus. He posted it on Facebook. That's how I learned about Andre's situation. Soon after that, Pia, the mother of my granddaughter, Imani, sends me a text message indicating that she has the virus. I'm stunned. It's becoming increasingly clear this disease is random. Andre is an entertainer and Pia is an attorney. Coronavirus does not discriminate. By mid-April, most of the East Coast, California, and several northern states are in complete lockdown. My wife, Vanessa, and I decide early on that we are sheltering in place as mandated by the governor. I only leave the house to go to the store for groceries and necessary items. I'm not leaving my house unless it's necessary, and Vanessa isn't leaving the house, period. Sadly, as we enter the month of May, domestic violence cases skyrocket during the pandemic as abusers are sheltered in place with their victims, usually wives and girlfriends. COVID-19 has brought one thing into focus. Vanessa and I really like each other, and we love each other as well. We couldn't imagine sheltering in place for months with someone we didn't love and care about how we do. She has been my rock. I'm learning a lot about myself while dealing with this coronavirus. I can make do with a lot less in terms of stuff. I tend to procrastinate, but I'm working hard on improving my turnaround times. I have a great need to be in touch with my family. I have 2 sisters, Claudette and Barbara, who live in Chicago and Baltimore respectively, and 1 brother, William, the recluse, who lives in Clover, Virginia. I check in with them regularly just to hear their voices. As an entertainer, the consequences and outcomes of the pandemic are coming fully into focus. We had cancellation after cancellation as far as gigs go. It was slow at first. Initially, there were postponements and let's wait and sees. Then slowly by late March, early April, the cancellation notices started coming in until I looked up one day and realized all my gigs were gone. through the end of 2020. And I'll sidebar, right now, my next gig is scheduled for March 2021. There's nothing more devastating to a performer than to have nothing on the calendar for the foreseeable future. What do I do when you can't even go out and get a straight gig? How do I take care of my family and keep a roof over our heads? I'm still in the process of answering these very difficult questions. Stay tuned. There is still a crisis in progress.
Well, thank you, Joe. That was excellent. I can tell there was a lot of Joe Coleman in that. You really, I think, shared with us your feelings. And I have a bunch of questions that I'm sure others will come up with too. But what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Dreama and ask her. I love the title of yours, Dreama, Corona Chronicles. How about sharing the chronicles with us?
I would be happy to. First, let me say how nice it is to meet you, Don, someday in person, I'm hoping. And anytime I get to be anywhere close to Joe Coleman, it's a good day for me. He knows how much I love him. So, and Kathy and Ashley, this is wonderful, just having this human connection. So I'm so happy we're doing this. All right, here we go. Corona Chronicles by Dreama Denver. Who could have imagined what the year 2020 would bring? As we rang in the new year at midnight on January the 1st, we were celebrating what we thought would be the year of clarity, the year of perfect vision. 2020 had such a beautiful ring to it, not to mention how perfect it looked visually when it was written out. Sadly, 2020 would prove to be the most confusing, divisive, difficult year in my memory. Who could have imagined terms like social distancing, flattening the curve, lockdown, herd immunity, quarantine, and pandemic becoming part of our daily narrative? Maybe we should have suspected that 2020 had it in for us when January alone saw so many disturbing events. The first case of something called COVID-19 reported in the state of Washington. The announcement of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepping away from the royal family. The shocking death of Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter Gigi, and 7 others in a helicopter crash in California. And then the horrifying wildfires in Australia. All of this during the month of January. Who could have imagined that by March, the entire world would be in lockdown? Lockdown. Told to shelter in place, we were only allowed to venture outside the confines of our own little world for essentials like groceries and prescriptions, all the while wearing a mask, staying 6 feet apart, and using hand sanitizer when we couldn't wash our hands repeatedly. Good hygiene definitely made sense, but what didn't make sense to anyone was the run on toilet paper. For months, it was impossible to find toilet paper, and that scarcity provided a touch of humor in the early days of quarantine. Who could have imagined not being able to visit our loved ones in nursing homes or hospitals? For the families who lost loved ones during this pandemic, no funerals were allowed, which meant their loved ones died and were laid to rest alone. I lost my own 92-year-old mother on January 29th, just before the lockdown occurred, and I've been thankful every day since for the blessing of being able to be with her when she passed. Large gatherings of any kind were put on hold. No concerts, no church, no school, and no sporting events. The only large gatherings that seemed permissible were protests. Some peaceful, some not so peaceful. Some with protesters wearing masks, and some with maskless protesters screaming into each other's faces. Obviously, the mask requirement became very confusing, changing hourly and seemingly dependent on exactly what you were doing when you were or weren't wearing one. The frustration caused by this confusion sparked pro and con outrage all over social media. But even though confusion reigned, there were many blessings in the midst of the trials. And that's what I'd like to focus on when it comes to my personal journey through this extraordinary time. As a first-time children's book author, I was ecstatic about the official launch of my award-winning children's book, Four Bears in a Box. It was set to launch, or the launch was set to take place at the Texas Library Association conference in Houston at the end of March. Then came word that the event was canceled due to COVID-19. In a matter of weeks, maybe even days, my appearance in Chicago at the American Library Association National Conference, scheduled for June, was also canceled. My book was about four bears inside their magical box. But my manager, Burke Allen, my publisher, Headline Books, and I were forced, like everyone else, to think outside the box for some magical way to promote my new release. Commonplace today, Facebook Live wasn't an everyday occurrence for most of us in March of 2020, but they became an almost hourly occurrence as authors, musicians, actors, and artists search for ways to promote and entertain. It's all in the timing. Isn't that what they say? The original version of Four Bears in a Box was written 20 years before. My husband, Bob Denver, better known to fans as Gilligan, had challenged me to write a children's book for our autistic son. He gave me a title, encouraged me to think Dr. Seuss because our son loved his book so much, and told me he had no doubt that I could do it. So I did it. I wrote the story in rhyme, a la Dr. Seuss, and for my effort, got a big thumbs up from Bob and from Colin. Then, as often happens, life got in the way. Our son got older and more of a challenge to his parents, who provided his 24/7, 365 care. And of course, my husband became ill and passed away. Through all those valleys, the bears were put away and forgotten. Then came the spring of 2019, when during a spring cleaning urge to purge, I ran across my typewritten pages. An excited call to my manager resulted in a wonderful publisher and Headline Books, a top-notch illustrator, and the enormously talented Ashley Belote, revisions that 20 years later made the book even timelier, and a spring 2020 release. My book release on Facebook Live was a direct result of the country being quarantined, and quarantine meant that children were no longer in school. Parents were forced to homeschool via the internet, and unexpectedly, families were sheltering in place 24 hours a day, spending every waking moment together. As the weeks went by, families became desperate for entertainment, diversion, anything to break the monotony. Enter my talented friend, Kevin Sizemore, actor Kevin Sizemore, who, like the rest of us, was quarantined at home with his wife, Tina, and his son, Gunnar. Normally, Kevin would have been on location filming, but lockdown meant that he was housebound and, like all artists, looking for a creative outlet. After my Facebook Live launch, Kevin called me. I want to do something with Four Bears in a Bag, he told me. I'm not sure exactly what, but I'm calling to ask if that would be okay with you. Would that be okay with me? Would that be okay? Knowing Kevin's talent and his determination, my answer was a resounding yes. In a matter of weeks, the most endearing video of my book was launched on YouTube. Produced by Kevin, read by Charlie Adler, the voice of Tiny Toons Buster Bunny, the director of Kung Fu Panda, one of the top voice actors in the business, and with music provided by Nashville singer-songwriter and my beautiful friend, Delnora Reed, the video brought my book to life in a way that I never imagined. 3 crazy talented artists used their time in quarantine to create something magical for isolated children and parents everywhere. And they did it with my children's story. In this case, it really was all in the timing. You know, there's nothing like quarantine to make you stop, or at least slow down and take stock of your life. I stopped, and in a way I hadn't before, grasped how fragile our freedom is. I've worked with veterans for over a decade, and those relationships have shown me that freedom certainly isn't free. But lockdown gave us all a taste of what it would be like to lose our freedoms completely. We can never, ever let that happen. Too many have fought and died to make this country a beacon of hope to people all over the world. I slowed down and looked around at the beauty of God's creation. All this mad dashing through life makes us miss so much. How often do we not notice an awe-inspiring cloud formation, a sunrise or a sunset, the peacefulness of a solitary walk? Henry David Thoreau said it best: heaven is under our feet as well as over our heads. We just have to slow down and breathe. I took stock and gave thanks for the blessings of having a roof over my head, food on my table, bills to pay, which meant my needs were met, hot water for a shower, electricity to keep me warm or cool, devoted caregivers for my autistic son, and the love of my life dog, my best friend, I have to mention him, and my constant companion, Zen. Recognizing the blessings of the friends in my life who loved and supported me made the days and months in quarantine easier to bear. However, do not think for a minute that I didn't have moments of feeling the most alone I've ever felt. Believe me, I did. Being singular rather than plural through a trying time like this was a challenge for many of us. But I know this dystopian-looking world that we now inhabit isn't our final destination. So I worked to focus on the fact that we're just passing through. 5 years ago, if any one of us had been asked where we saw ourselves 5 years into the future, not one of us would have answered with the reality of 2020. Seemingly, our world was falling apart. But the prophetic timeline makes it clear that the opposite is true. Everything is really falling into place. That should give us hope in these uncertain times, and that hope should be the reason that we keep looking up.
Well, thank you very much, Dreama. That was terrific. I loved your introspective. But let me go back to Joe for a minute, and I'd like to hear a little bit about what has changed. I mean, it's been a few months since you handed this in, and have things changed for you, Joe, over that period of time?
Well, that's an interesting question, because in certain ways it has not. But because, I mean, none of the artists that I'm aware of are hardly working from that perspective. But in other ways, it has changed. Out of necessity comes invention, you might call it. You know, and we've figured out how to do virtual performances, and how to find other ways to express our talent and our care for others. You know, it's interesting, if I may say, in listening to, I read it, but hearing her read it really made it all the more. Listening to Miss Dreama read hers, and I see how outward her view was. You know, she looked out. And I have to say, I looked in. It's quite interesting.
Oh, I looked in too once in a while.
But you know, so but how it changed, I found other ways to express myself. You know, the pandemic is probably the reason that I can call myself an author now, in that, you know, it allowed me to explore that area, that way of expressing myself. You know, I'm a songwriter, so yeah, I didn't realize I could translate that into word, you know, the written word like that. I have to say, my mother-in-law passed during that period, and my wife asked me why I didn't mention that, and I don't have a really good answer, other than I was so in the depths of that circumstance, and it seemed private to me, you know, because her mom had, we moved her in. She was in a nursing home, and we were able to, a rehabilitation center, I'm sorry, and we were able to bring her home. And we thought we were going to have a lot more time with her, and I actually ended up with having about 2 weeks with her. And we, you know, we set up 24-hour care for her, and we watched over her and held her hand, and you know, and it was just a very personal time that I didn't realize that I had internalized and made it so personal until she asked me that question. Well, how come you didn't mention that in the book? And I had to stop and think for a moment. It was just very personal. It was very um, solemn, uh, quiet time. You know, we were kind of quiet around her, and we were just kind of just trying to show her, give her as much love as we possibly could. And so this has been quite an experience for me. And what I've learned is more about myself. That's pretty much what has changed. I know more about who I am and what makes me tick in a certain way. And I realize how much I need and love other people. You know, I was actually brought up that way, but this allows me to know how much I miss others, and how, you know, because I pick up the phone and I call someone I haven't spoken to in ages and ages. Hey, how you doing? And that sort of thing. So I guess those are the primary change for me, is just an outward look that perhaps I didn't have before.
Well, that's great comments. Thank you, Joe. You know, you talk about, we had on a prior reading, we had, I think it was Frank Pandora, if I remember, he read about the fact that his brother died, and it was hard for them to get there. And I've seen this in an over 55 community where, you know, one partner has another partner over in the nursing home and they can't go see them. I mean, that's a real tough time, and that's a time to look within, I think.
Yes, yeah.
Well, thank you, Joe. Dreama, how about yourself? What's changed in the last few months for you?
Well, I have to agree with what Joe said in his memoir about missing hugs. I am a hugger. And I tell you that human contact, not even when you are able to socially distance around somebody, you can't, you know, the bumping elbows, it just isn't the same thing as being able to give somebody a great big hug. I really do miss that. A lot of good. I have a good one for you. A lot of good has come out of it. It's sometimes difficult to see it. I don't want people to think that from what I wrote that I've never had a down moment. I have never felt so alone in my life at times. And it has made me, I don't know how to explain this, sort of, it's kind of personal, but sort of revisit the loss of my husband, and the fact that we're not going through this together. It has sort of brought that to the surface on occasion in a way. But one thing that has really changed, that's kind of nice, ladies, you're going to know what I'm talking about here. You don't, when you're going out like to the grocery store to shop or pick up prescriptions or whatever, you're wearing a mask, you don't have to worry about makeup anymore. So I think that's kind of an upside. You don't have to worry about the makeup and the eyes. You got sunglasses on, so you're pretty well hidden. So that has been a positive, if we're looking for positives. You know, not being able to, my son lives in a home across the way from me. And so when I go over there, I can look at him through a sliding glass door, and that, you know, he's nonverbal, so we can't talk. I can't pick up the phone and talk to him. And that's been a bit of an adjustment. During the summer, I was able to go over and stay 6 feet apart, sit out on the deck, and at least, you know, look him in the eyes. So I don't know. I think sometimes I think God didn't cause this, but he stopped us all to give us time to reflect. I don't know, Joe, would you agree with that? To reflect and
totally
look at
agree.
life and understand what's important and all of that, because we all were forced to do that.
You know, I think I share that thought and belief. We were just getting so far apart from you know, in our views and really getting rigid about that. You know, getting so rigid about it. It seems like the Lord said, "Okay, let me let you see what it really feels like to be apart and not be able to be together, and see if you like that." And I think most of us have found that we really don't like that and don't enjoy that. There are, to my surprise, you know, with my choir, I go to Alfred Street Baptist Church, And we have Zoom meetings with just all the choir members since we don't get together anymore. And several of them who described themselves as introverts said they enjoyed it, enjoyed the solitude. And the rest of us is like, really, yeah, that interaction is so important to a well-rounded life. And so, yes, I do believe that in his own way, the Lord said, okay, we'll let you see what it really feels like to not have the option to get together.
Yeah, the singular part is tough sometimes, because really when you're 24 hours a day in the house by yourself and nobody to talk to, like you have Vanessa, beautiful Vanessa, say hi to her for me. And Don has his wife. So see, I think that helps. There's just moments that I know people out there identify with me that it's been very, very difficult, but we have to push forward and pray that it's going to be, we're going to somehow, some way, someday get back to normal.
Yeah.
And be a more united.
Yeah, I'm hoping we'll find our way back to each other through this. That when we actually come out of this, that we'll honor the privilege that we have of being close together and connected. That we will give that its proper place.
We won't take it for granted again. I'm pretty sure of that, ever.
Yeah, exactly.
We won't, for sure.
Early on in the pandemic, I found myself glued to the TV, which I managed to get away from because I'm tired of it. But I remember Governor Coleman said one day, people asked him, when are we going to get back to normal? And I thought his answer was pretty solid. Probably never. What we're going to is a new normal. And nobody knows what that's going to be. And we have to find it ourselves. And I think, Joe and Dreama, your comments are so good of reaching out to people. We had a wonderful reading, I think it was our last one, by Donna Lease. Donna is a longtime friend. And if you read her memoir, it's, hello, your anxiety is calling. And Donna is one of those people who are challenged with anxiety. Yeah. And we had another reader who sent a wonderful comment. Because at the end of the talk, at the end of her reading, Donna talked a little bit about, we need to help people who have some of these challenges. Mm-hmm. And I think Joe and Dreama, both of you have kind of said, we got to reach out to people that we can and try to help them along. Because some of us kind of go along. I know I've been blessed with a kind of a happy Norwegian attitude about things, but I realize that not everybody has that. And what Elaine and I have found since we got here, we've had something to do all the time. We have a dance group, programs, and going out, and all of a sudden, we didn't have any of that. Yeah. And we had to stop and say, okay. And now we go down to the river and have a picnic, and we do this, and we begin to feel that, life isn't blowing past me anymore. So have you been able to get out much, Joe and Dreama? Or is that, because we really can't, we're not eating a lot in restaurants and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, just a pickup thing. Just a pickup, bring it home. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done some of that, and I live on top of a mountain in West Virginia, so let me tell you what, when I missed the big city, when this all started, I was so grateful to live exactly where I live. Yeah. Because we haven't been overwhelmed with it. It certainly has come here, and I'm on top of a mountain where, nobody's around. So if I want to go out and take a walk, if weather permits and all that, I can certainly do that. So that has been, I think that's why I wrote the part in my memoir about, appreciating the beauty of God's creation, because really, it was those times that I really looked around me and went, and I've gotten really, what is this, Joe? Somebody explain to me. I've gotten really fascinated with clouds. I just want to go out and look at the clouds and see if I see anything in the clouds, you know, and that's something I never thought that much about. Sunrises and sunsets, you know,
Mhm.
I saw them, yay. And I don't know, I've become very attracted to creation. I
Yeah.
really have, and the beauty of it all.
Yeah, my thing is the water. I love being close to the water, to, you know, and that serene. It calms me.
Are you
And
talking like the ocean kind of water?
the ocean.
Uh.
Yeah, yeah, not the bathtub. Yeah, the
No, no.
yeah,
Not maybe a lake or
yeah. Any of
Coleman
that.
or something.
Yeah, you know where I live now. There's lots of trees and stuff. In fact, and so I just get out and I walk, and kind of feel nature. And
You have a beautiful, I've seen where you live. You have a beautiful place to
yeah, thank
out and
you.
walk. You've seen where I live too, so you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Bill, are you out in California? I don't know where you live.
I live right now. I'm in Potomac, Maryland, right outside of
You
Washington.
do?
DC.
Okay.
Yeah, right outside DC. I was born in DC, but I was here and lived in New York for about 25 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One of the
We
things.
have-
Oh, go ahead.
We have a few questions and some comments if you'd like to take those.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, so Jennifer Diamond commented and said that this is, she's referring to Joe's. This is very inspiring, Mr. Coleman. Let's keep dancing. And then we have Claudette Coleman saying, "My big brother making history again. I love this."
Oh, that's my sweet sister from Chicago. She's a wonderful, sweet young lady. My baby sister. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that she was able to watch today. That's special.
Yeah.
And then we have another comment from Jennifer, again for you, Joe. You had mentioned that you have been doing some virtual performances. So she asked, can we purchase tickets to your virtual performances if you are having them? And then Claudette also said, this is such a beautiful event. Thanks for bringing this platform to us.
Okay, I didn't even have to pay her for this. And this is what yeah, the virtual performances. Yes, I'm going to try a platform called Sessions Live, and I'm thinking of doing something right after Thanksgiving. So stay tuned. And I'm planning on doing a New Year's Eve show. So everybody get dressed up, have your champagne bottle there and glasses, and we're just going to have a kind of like a fun evening. Since we can't go out, let's all have fun together indoors, and we're just going to do our little thing. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, yes, definitely keep us updated, and we'll let everybody watching today know how to get tickets to that. And then Rhonda Mills says, this is just terrific and very much needed. And I'm grateful to know my brother from another mother, Joe, and delighted to become aware of Dreama. As a freelance textile artist and writer on the mend as well, I have gathered new energy into my sadness and loneliness from today's meeting. Peace, Rhonda.
Wow.
So that's great to hear.
That's lovely.
Yeah, right. Speaking of my New York days, Rhonda Mills is my neighbor. She lives around the corner from where I live in my apartment in New York.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
I love this. I love that we're getting some personal connections here. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
And also, I wanted to make sure to thank our sponsors, the Next Generation Indie Book Awards, for our program today. And also to let everybody watching today know that Dreama is, as of right now, scheduled to have a book signing at the Greenbrier Resort in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, December 11th and 12th at Fizzy's Land of Oz at the Greenbrier. So keep your fingers crossed that works out.
We will socially distance. We'll wear our masks. We'll be very careful. But come and see me, guys, if everything doesn't get closed down.
Yes. And then we have another thank you from Jennifer, thanking both of you for joining us today. So that's all of the comments and questions that we have from Facebook.
It's Joe's fan club.
It is.
Joe, you got a fan. I knew you did. Awesome.
And Dreama's fan club. You guys are both superstars. This is so much
I'm borrowing his fans now. I'm going to try to get a few over to my side.
Hey, how far is Green? I don't remember how far Greenbrier is from Washington, D.C. How far is that?
It's not that far. You want to come?
I may sneak down there. I've been wanting to try something. I'm always nervous to go to these places, but
Kathy can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm thinking it's about 4.5, 5 hours maybe.
I would guesstimate that because it's, you know, towards the southern part of the state. So
Mhm.
Yeah, well, it's an hour and 20 from me, so it'd be closer to you, maybe 4.
Yeah,
Oh,
maybe
Joe,
four.
that would be so awesome.
Yeah, I have a Greenbrier story, right?
Okay.
Y2k. You remember Y2k? One of
Uh-huh.
those moments you want, the unforgettable moments.
I remember that. I was 10.
You were there.
Oh, jeez. Oh, smack her for
You
me.
know, and the world was going to end,
Oh, yeah.
effectively. And the Platters were booked to perform there for New Year's Eve. Now, there's that New Year's Eve thing again. For New Year's Eve, the year 2000. And we went. I don't know what was wrong with us, but we showed up. There may have been 8 people in the whole hotel in the Greenbrier altogether. Maybe 8. Everyone was just so afraid to. So it was us and 8 people.
For Y2K, seriously.
Yeah, they took it totally serious. No one showed up. No one.
And the Greenbrier, people who aren't aware of the Greenbrier, it is world renowned. I mean, it's a beautiful,
Yeah.
a really beautiful resort. So
Yep.
8
Yeah.
people, I can't believe that.
Yep. We had the hotel to ourselves, and
That would have been kind of fun, though.
well, in a way, but it's hard to entertain for 8 people for New Year's Eve.
Well, no, that's true. That's true. Especially on New Year's Eve.
You know, like on New Year's Eve, right?
Exactly.
Blow to nobody. It was really interesting. It was quite.
There'll be there was no crowd surfing for that one, I would imagine.
But I just want Joe to know if he wants to come to the Greenbrier. That would be so cool. December 11th and 12th.
Yes.
11, 12. Okay.
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 About it.
Excellent.
I love
Well,
it.
Don, do you have any other questions?
No, I just wanted to remind everybody about the Voices from the Pandemic. We've got a total of 32 different memoirs in here. We've talked about a few, but we've got them from healthcare workers. And we also have 8 from elementary school students. And I think that I've read those, and I've read them 2 or 3 times. And some of them, are really good. So I think you'll enjoy this. So I'd recommend that you pick one up, because I think it's going to be a good read and something you'll enjoy.
I can tell you as an author now, as an author,
An award-winning author.
an award-winning author, I was really proud to be a part of that circumstance. I can add that to this. This is my one-man show, No Boundaries. Now I can add, and it was no boundaries because I sing jazz, pop, R&B, blues, pretty much all the genres, and I've even attempted a little country, but I don't think anyone would actually show up to hear me sing country at all. But so now I
I would be
can
surprised.
add author down under there, as a thanks to the Headline Books folks, and I'm just really so pleased to be with you guys today. And thank you, Kathy. I don't know where y'all. I know you're over there
I don't know
somewhere.
where she is either, but we love you, Kathy.
Yeah, we love you, and thank you so much for hosting
Thank
us.
you too for coming. This was great.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you all so much. Thank you to our presenters, and thank you so much to Jennifer, Rhonda, and Claudette for your comments. And again, if any of you all have questions that you think of later on for our presenters, we will be checking these videos throughout the week. So just go ahead and put them in the comments section, and we'll wrangle our presenters and make them answer.
Yeah, that's right.
So again,
Tomorrow, that's what I want to know.
yes,
Maybe we could make a weekly date to be able to get together like this, guys.
I think so. I think that we definitely need all the positive things
We
that we
do.
can look forward to. Yes. And again, there's links here in the comments if you all want to purchase a copy of this book. And so from all of us at Headline Books, thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope that you have a safe and happy Thanksgiving. And we hope to see you soon on Zoom Into Books again. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye now.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.